to another live episode of Halftime Adjustments. It's your man, Eddie, out there, my man, G Witt.
Tighten up, baby. Tighten up.
Tighten up, man. We want to get back at you guys today. We know it's a championship weekend. Wanted to just kind of put a nice bow on the 2020 season for the Tennessee Titans and what to look forward to going into 2021 with free agency looming next, draft coming up, which we'll talk about that later on another show. And then looking at possible coaching hires that's out there and what's been done so far, which is not really too much. A lot of talk of potential hirees. One interview with Terrell Austin from the Pittsburgh Steelers for DC, but other than that, nothing else. But Grover, if you could sum up 2020, man, and I know where you want to go at first, but if you can sum up without beating them up too bad, what would you say for this Tennessee Titans team for 2020?
All right, let's just be honest about it. First of all, you had an 11-5 record, so you had a good season. Let's just be real about it. 11-5 is nothing to sneeze at. You won the division, which is what one of your goals for this season was. So let's be real about it and be honest about it. The Titans had a good season. I think the problem that most Titans fans have, and I know that I have, is that we know it could have been a lot better. Mm-hmm. We really could have been competing for the conference championship or the conference title with a better defense, but that's neither here nor there. But overall, 2020 was a good season, considering everything that happened, considering everything that we had to go through as far as COVID was concerned. You have to look at it, in hindsight, take all the emotion out of it. 2020 was a good season. You can't complain about 11-5. You really can't. We can find things wrong all day long, but you can't complain about 11-5, man.
Yeah,
not with the history of this team.
Right, and I agree with you on that assessment. Very good points made there, and I agree with you. 11-5, hadn't won a division in some years since 2008, and so you like the advancement. So you can say somewhat. I know the theme was from going from good to great. Even though it wasn't great, it was better than good. You went from winning 9-7 for almost 4 years straight to 11-5. You win a division. You had one of the best offenses in the NFL. You had a 2,000-yard back. You had a quarterback with 40 total touchdowns and almost 4,000 yards passing. You had a 1,000-yard receiver in just his second season. And so there's a lot of things to build on for this football team going forward into 2021. But, as we look at it, Grover, there's a lot of big names on this free agent list that this team has that they're going to have to make decisions on real soon if they're going to take them, if they're going to sign them and whatnot. And you can start on the offensive side of the football and right off the bat you got Corey Davis, and there's a lot of talk out there that they should let him walk because his price tag has gone up because he had a pretty good season. What's your take on that, Grover?
Well, in all honesty, they like you said, on the offensive side of the ball, they got some serious free agents they got to look at. Corey Davis being one of them. Corey Davis is going. He may not command as much as everybody, because one thing you found out about Corey Davis, even though he's a very good receiver, but you found out really that he's better suited as the number 2 receiver as opposed to being a number 1. He can be a number 1, but I would say this, from my standpoint, looking at him, I think the overall aggressiveness and for Corey Davis is what really holds him back as far as being a number 1. The number 1 talent is there. I just think he's probably better suited for a team that has a number 2 already, that has a number 1 already in place, and he'll fit with a number 2. So should the Titans sign him back? Absolutely, because him and A.J. Brown give the Titans a furious 1-2 punch as far as receivers are concerned. And if they both can stay healthy throughout the season, it really opens up that offense. The biggest issue the Titans have right now, in all honesty, is the tight end position. Yes. Jonnu Smith is up, and I know for sure they want to sign him back. You also have Anthony Firska is up. Matter of fact, all the tight ends that we use this year, they're all free agents. So but you definitely want to sign, to me, you want to sign Jonnu Smith back. And I say sign Corey Davis back simply because they're your draft picks. Mm-hmm. let's be real about it. They're your draft picks. You know them inside and out. You know what you're going to get from them, and you know they're going to produce for you. So, yeah, I would rather see them sign the draft picks back because, as a friend of ours always says, you build your team with your draft picks rather than with free agents.
Right.
So Anthony Firkser, he was an undrafted free agent when we signed him, and he has proven himself really to be a good, reliable, for lack of a better term, number 3 receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not great at blocking. He's adequate or somewhat improved. But as far as a third down receiver, possession receiver, yeah, really, he has great hands and can get open and make serious tough catches. You got to give him credit for that. So, yeah, I think they should sign Corey Davis back. I think they should sign Jonnu Smith back, and I think they should sign Anthony Firkser back if they can. Hopefully, with the offense we had this year, that would that would give them a desire to sign back with us for a few more years.
Yeah, and I agree. Corey Davis is a must sign, in my opinion. Like you said, I just don't think he's that. He needs that other guy across from him to be able to take that attention off him. Like you said, he's got some good intangibles. He's big, he's physical, he can block. He can catch. He's going to make a good receiver for somebody, even if the Titans decide to go a different direction from him. Jonnu Smith is a key to me as well. I think he is that new age tight end that can block, that can run. You even see him in a backfield lineup as a running back at times. He's got enough speed to get out of the backfield. Firkser is the wild card with the health of Adam Humphries unknown at this time. Who knows if he's going to come back next year or not. Firkser is that guy that can play inside and run those seam routes and make those possession catches, as you mentioned. And, it's going to be key to keep those guys. Even Michael Pruitt, you got to really think about him as well. He's a good blocker. He can catch the ball as well. Jeff Swain is a free agent. And so a lot of questions, a lot of decisions to have to be made, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. And not to mention, what to do on the offensive line, because you got to get some more depth there. You saw at the left tackle, we had at least 3 guys play there this year. After Lewan went down, and is Quisenberry the guy to come back? Is Sombrello the guy to back up Lewan? Well, a lot of questions along the offensive line.
And that's the key for me. To be truthful and to be honest about it, I would say Sombrello. I think you found out real quick that he's really not the guy that can play the left tackle position for you. He's athletic, but his footwork is really poor. And his handwork is really poor. So they may sign him back as a depth guy to have some depth on the offensive line. Quisenberry, I think they'll bring back simply because he played good towards the end of the season. He struggled. Yep. Again, there's a reason why he wasn't starting. He couldn't supplant Taylor Lewan, but you found out real quick that he's not that bad. Again, Aaron Brewer, the rookie who came in for Roger Saffold, played good,
played great,
in spots and everything. Actually, did really well whenever he got in the field. So, you have some things there. Jabril Douglas is one of the Jamil Douglas. I'm sorry, is one of the wild cards because they'll probably sign him back again simply because he can cover basically 3 positions, both guard positions, and he's an experienced backup center. And with Ben Jones, he fought through injuries this year. So you got to look at the standpoint that you're going to need somebody there to play center for you in case he gets hurt or anything, because he's been starting center for us for the past 4 or 5 years. Right. And you're gonna need, as long as J-Rob's been here 5 years, he's been the starting center for 5 years because J-Rob brought him in the first season. So you look at that. Again, Sombrero, I will be honest with you, I was totally disappointed in his performance this year. And then you got to also look at the wild card of Isaiah Wilson. You don't know what's going to happen with him. Really, I just hope the young man gets his act together. He's a young guy. He could actually have a lot of football left in him, but he's got to get his act together because, you can't continue to do the things you're doing and expect to be playing in the league. And it seems to me, sometimes you have to think about it. Does he really want to play in the league? And with the actions he's portraying and everything, it may be one of them things where he really doesn't want to play in the league.
Right.
He really doesn't. So, I mean, those are the things you got to look at on the offensive side of the ball. Again, you got to go find, I think, running backs. We saw Darrington Evans do a good job. We saw Jeremy McNichols, Boise State, do a good job. So I just think you're going to have to work on some things overall in the offense and find an offensive coordinator first. But there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I mean that to that point, as the OC, and somebody brought that up in the comments, is that there hadn't been a lot of talk about OC at this point. They've talked, Vrabel kind of gave that, we'll look within, we'll evaluate all positions, that talk. And who on the internal staff right now can take the place of Arthur Smith? I'm sure there's somebody. I'm not saying there's not. But you've got to look at this offense and what type of offense this team needs to run to be successful. Because we got a play action quarterback, we got a running back that can pound it inside and outside, and you got receivers that work well off of play action, getting open, getting downfield and blocking. So you really got to who out there is going to run a similar offense, unless you got somebody internal that can follow that same suit. But who out there external can run that same type of offense?
The only person I could think of that could probably run that same type of offense, in all honesty, is Jim Caldwell.
Yeah.
Jim Caldwell, when he was the OC for Baltimore, they ran a similar style offense where they ran the ball and threw the ball and won a Super Bowl with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also he was an OC for Indianapolis when they had Peyton Manning.
Right.
So you got to stop and think about those things. He's the one guy with the experience who could come in and actually call plays based on the personnel that you have and make it work. As far as internal, really, there's only two guys on the staff who've been OCs before, and that's Todd Downing, who's the tight ends coach, and Pat O'Hara, who's the quarterback coach. Pat O'Hara did more offensive coordinator in the Arena League,
mm-hmm.
which kind of gives me pause, because the bottom line is, the thing I always hated about the Arena League is just everything was built for the offense to score 70 points a game. So, I never saw a football game before in my life until I went to an arena football game where the defensive side of the ball got called for illegal procedure. So, and the only other right now, the only outside candidate that Vrabel has interviewed is Pep Hamilton.
Pep Hamilton, yeah.
Who's the QB coach at not San Diego, the LA Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be honest with you, with the two interviews that Vrabel has had so far, I'm thinking, I'm just going to put it out there, I'm thinking he's just trying to make sure they cover the Rooney Rule and move forward.
Yeah, and I can see that as well. Some names that popped up as OC, Tony Elliott from Clemson, but they denied the interview request.
Yeah, he does, and I think he denied it too. He doesn't want to leave.
He did. He's the one denied, and so which could have been a pretty good hire. You got, of course, Bill O'Brien. His name is hot, but I don't know if you want to bring him in.
Bill O'Brien went to Alabama.
He did go. That's right. He did. His name was on the list for down there, and I wasn't sure if he got, but good point there. Anthony Lynn, his name is popping up as well, and so
yeah, but he went to Detroit.
So so all the big names, I'm gonna say names are off the list, and so we'll see.
That hasn't popped up yet is Jim Caldwell.
Jim Caldwell.
As far as big names are concerned.
That's right.
And to me, I don't think you could go wrong with Jim Caldwell as an OC. Like I said, he's done a great job as an OC everywhere he's went. Very detailed oriented. His offenses constantly move the ball up and down the field, and they score points. Right. So as far as an OC is concerned, I don't think you could have a problem with him. And the thing about him, like I said, he's been around long enough that he will adapt to what you have.
Mm-hmm.
He won't change it, tremendously. And try to put like this. He's not the type of person that's going to try to put a square peg in a round hole. He's going to definitely try to make the offense work with the personnel that you have, which is what you need to do as a coach. Same thing on the defensive side of the ball. Let's be honest about it. You built a fairly good defense talent-wise,
mm-hmm.
but obviously your scheme last year left a lot to be desired.
Yep.
So you have to look at somebody who's going to be able to come in and make the best of the talent that you have. And there's some good names out there. I mean, they interviewed Terrell Austin from Pittsburgh, and, he was a DC in Detroit and Cincinnati. Neither one of those stops ended well for him.
Right.
In all honesty, I think he had a couple of good years in Detroit, but he had a couple of really bad years in Detroit where they had a lot of injuries and he couldn't make up for those injuries. So that being stated, you don't want to have a coach that can't adapt to your injuries. And then also you have God, who was the other guy I said in Cincinnati, he got fired after a 3-game skid in Cincinnati where they gave up over 500 yards almost a game or something like that. It was just crazy. And Marvin Lewis took back over the defensive play call and they fired him there. So, but he did coach Pittsburgh's secondary this past season.
He did.
And that secondary did play well.
He did.
So, I'm not sure if he can be a DC again, but hey, he's got experience. So, but it sounds to me like he's more of a systems coach as opposed to a coach that actually adapts to the players that he has.
Right. And, also had word out there about, Rex Ryan, Rob Ryan, those guys.
Rob Ryan went to be an inside linebacker coach, and I forgot which team it is.
So somebody already scooped him up. So a lot of people coming off the board.
That's Rob
quick.
Ryan, not Rex.
Right. Rex is on ESPN. I don't know if he want to give up that job.
I don't know if Rex wants to come back and coach again, man.
He got a sweet gig right now.
He made his twin brothers back in there. He may want to come back. But, on the defensive side of the ball, there's some guys out there. I mean, you still got Raheem Morris.
Yep, he's still out there. That's right.
He's still out there. Again, like I said, Gerard Mayo, who's been coaching under Bill Belichick, he's been the LB coach in New England. So, I'll stop. If he came here as a DC, we would be the first DC job he had. You had Aaron Glenn, who's coaching DBs for the Saints. And then you have Gerald Alexander's coaching DBs for the Dolphins. So those are names. And don't forget, the crazy man is still out there too, Greg Williams.
Greg Williams still out there. You got Wade Phillips still out there.
Yeah.
And so like you said, there are some guys still out there. Rob Marinelli, he's out there.
Yeah.
You already mentioned Raheem Morris. And so Gus Bradley, he's out there as well. And so, there's still some guys out there.
Gus. I thought Gus Bradley got picked up by somebody. I'm just not sure who.
Yeah, I know he was a candidate for someone, but I can't remember who it was.
I can't remember. I don't know if he went to Dallas or what, but I know I thought he signed with somebody.
Yeah, and so a lot of people out there is this the movement of the brass. So the front office hasn't made any moves yet. To me, the quicker you can get these positions settled, the quicker you can start implementing your scheme. And looking at the talent and seeing if they, what you're going to need to implement this scheme and be effective. And so, quiet as kept, you have to get somebody in on this defense side of the ball. And not only get the DC, and then look at your coaching staff after that and see if you want to replace those coaches.
And that's the main point, because let's be real about it. When you look overall at what your defense did, third down percentage led the league in giving up on third downs conversions. Fourth down conversion was just as bad. It's just wasn't good for this defense at all this season. And obviously, players have something to do with it, but also scheme. So, you got to look at it from that standpoint. And I think when you go back and actually, just like we're doing with taking the emotion out of it, you have to understand that what you had and the scheme you were trying to run did not work. So you're going to have to find somebody, and like I've been saying throughout the season, who's able to adapt to the players that you have. To put the players in the best position to use their strengths, because the way you played it this past season didn't work at all. COVID had a lot to do with it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Dory Jackson being hurt all season had a lot to do with it, with players playing that you didn't expect to play. But you also had some players that took a downturn as far as their effectiveness was concerned. And mainly, like we said, we talk about the big ones, which is Rashad Evans and Kevin Byard. But you also had Kenny Vaccaro's effectiveness was down this year.
Right.
You had Quietus and kept before he got hurt. Even though he was starting to come on a little bit at the time he got hurt, Jayon Brown, his effectiveness was down this year. And Daquan Jones flashed a little bit, but overall his effectiveness was down. And Jeffrey Simmons, playing through injuries and everything, I would give him his credit, tried his best, but but the constant double teams on him
Mm-hmm.
really left a lot to be desired. And Harold Landry
Yeah.
took a downward trend. So you got to look at that defense overall and say, okay, what are we missing? Player-wise, they are missing some people, but also coaching-wise, what are you missing? Because I still go back to what I said throughout the season. Something happened with that secondary with the coaching to where those guys are no longer tackling the way they should. Now, the funny thing about it, Kevin Byard led the team in tackles, and Malcolm Butler was second, and Rashad Evans was third. That's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem.
Because before this season, I would say the past 5 seasons before now, it was always your inside linebacker who led you in tackles. Mm-hmm. Wesley Woodyard led you in tackles for like 3 years in a row.
Yep.
Then last year, I think it was Rashad Evans or Jayon Brown led you in tackles.
Mm-hmm.
But you always had a linebacker leading you in tackles. This year, that didn't happen. When your secondary is leading you in tackles, that's causing a problem. And it wasn't leading you in tackles because they was up on the line, tackling for the run and everything.
No,
there was a lot of
throwing
tackling
the ball.
In the secondary going on.
Right, a lot of passes being thrown.
Receivers and running backs catching out of the backfield. Right. So, we defensively you got to look at some things, and then of course, like we said earlier, you got to start looking at the free agents and start looking at that because Daquan Jones and Jadeveon Clowney are your two big defensive free agents you got to look at and decide on whether you're going to bring them back. You already know my opinion on Jadeveon, but Daquan Jones, that is one you got to seriously consider. Again, he's drafted talent. So the question is going to be, are you going to bring him back or not?
Right. And I'll get back on that in just a second. Just want a few more of those coaches that are out there, man. And thank you, Ryder, for that update. Dan Quinn went to the Cowboys.
That's what I thought.
He went to the Cowboys. So Gus Bradley's out there. You mentioned Greg Williams, Wakefield. Lovie Smith is out there as well.
Yeah, I forgot about him.
And so
because he got fired from Illinois. So
right. And so some guys are out there. There's some good guys, some good defensive minded guys out there. Raheem Morris, you mentioned him. Just think about what he did with the Falcons defense after he became the interim coach. And that defense started playing a lot better when he took over. And so, he's got some skills. He was at Tampa Bay for a little bit as well. And the defense was pretty good. And so I'm not going to ask him that, Carlton. So
ask him what?
About Clowney.
What about Clowney?
He said he just wants your opinion about him. So
I mean, again, taking emotion out of it and everything. I have never been a Clowney fan. I'll be honest with you. All through the offseason this past year, I was saying we didn't need to sign him. I didn't think he would be that big of a help, and I still feel that way. I just, I know opinions differ. I just don't see him. I'll put it like this. If you sign Clowney back, then you got to find another big name to take pressure off of him. He functions in a defense where he's not the main guy.
Yeah, you look what he was at, right? He was with J.J. Watt and Whitney Mercilus.
Houston, J.J. Watt, Whitney Mercilus, those were the two main guys. Jadeveon Clowney just filled in and played the wild card. Same thing happened to him in Seattle. He wasn't the main guy in Seattle. They had to always account for that middle linebacker that leads the league in tackles every
year.
Wagner. Bobby Wagner. So, he was able to freelance. You don't bring Jadeveon Clowney in and make him the focal point of your defense. He's not that guy.
Which he was supposed to be. Right. He was supposed to be the guy to save the pass rush, right?
Yeah, and he's never been that guy. So, that's just taking emotion out of it. Like I said, if you sign him, you got to go out and find somebody that's going to take the pressure off of him to allow him to freelance to make those splash plays, because that's really what he's good for. He's good for splash plays. Yeah. Not consistent.
That's right.
Down in and down out.
And that's what you saw. That's what you saw this past season. He one or two times, maybe 2 times a game. You saw him. If he didn't make the play, he disturbed the play in the backfield, or he run it down from the backside. But it wasn't much, and we talked about that after the first couple of weeks when he came back, that, he wasn't really making a huge impact on this defense. I mean, he wasn't even drawing a double team. No. Jeffrey Simmons was getting all the double team action, and you would have thought that it would have freed him up. But I 100% agree with you. I don't think they didn't need to sign him back. Number one, he's going to ask for too much money. And number two, he just doesn't fit on his football team. And so,
I'll be honest with you, as far as the money goes, really, you can't pay him big money. You
can't.
just can't.
No,
His
you can't.
market value has gone down tremendously after this season.
Oh
So
yeah.
nobody's going to give him the 12, 15 million that he got this year. Nobody's
Right.
going to do that.
And
You
on
know.
top of that, he's shown to be injury prone still.
Yeah. Well,
Right. He still got a
he's
health
always been
issue.
injury prone.
Right. He still got a health issue that he hasn't overcome yet. And so, yeah. So we move on from that experiment and bring in some younger guys. To be honest with you, the guys like Wyatt and those guys that they brought in later on in the season, those guys played well off the edge, and just got to give credit to J. Rob and Vrabel for finding those guys in undrafted free agency and bringing them in. And so as you look at the free agency on the defense side of the ball, like you mentioned, you talked about Daquan Jones. I agree with you. There's a guy that you have to bring back to help solidify that middle. Him and Jeffrey Simmons play well together, and I think they make a good duo. You also have Jayon Brown out there. Do you pay him the money, or do you move on with David Long Jr.? David Long Jr. has proven that he's a very good tackler. He fills the gaps. He did make some plays there at the in the playoff game in the last couple of weeks that got him out of position, overrun the play. And so you got to make a decision on your middle linebacker because right now Rashaan Evans didn't live up to his potential this season as well.
Well, and again, with Jayon Brown, the one thing that he has over David Long Jr. in all honesty is the fact that he can cover, running backs and some tight ends out the backfield. So, that's the thing you like about Jayon Brown. And also Jayon Brown's one of those guys who always seems to make plays. He's a playmaker. Let's just be real about it. He functions well in this defense. So to me, I think you bring him back again. That's another draft pick that you had that's in homegrown talent that you try to keep as much as possible. Now, let's be real about it. He's probably going to command a little bit more money than what you really want to pay. So that may be the one thing, because somebody else is going to want to pay him more money. Let's just be real about it. There's going to be somebody out there who's going to pay him. And, you got to put your market value on him. He's going to test the waters. But the bottom line is, do I think they should bring him back? And I'm partial because, like I said, he's homegrown talent. But, I think what you saw this year before he got hurt, he was leading the team in tackles.
Yeah, he was all over the field.
Yeah, he was all over the field. So before he got hurt, I think that's the one thing you got to look at. Rashaan Evans, him and Kevin Byard both got to have a resurgence this coming up season. They definitely got to have one. And you also got to look at Dane Cruikshank. He missed the entire season.
Right.
And that's one of your special team aces. And if you notice, punt coverage and kick coverage suffered with him not being in there. So, that draft, when you stop and think about it, J-Rob only had 4 picks. 3 of them stuck with the team.
Right.
All the 3 defenders, Landry, Rashaan Evans, Dane Cruikshank. And to me, they were all major contributors on this team. Like I said, your special team kick coverage suffered with Dane Cruikshank not being in there.
Right.
So, he's a special teamer. He can play some safety, which you like. He gives you that extra depth, so you hope to bring him back. I think you sign him back. Again, I'm like Taylor like he is with the Redskins. You stay with your draft picks as much as you possibly can. Yep. That's your homegrown talent. You've groomed them. They know you. You try to keep them as much as possible. Now I understand. I've been watching NFL football for most of my life anyway, and I understand the dynamics of the business. So sometimes you got to let some people go, and that hurts. I mean, that's what happened last season. But I think overall, there's some. I think if you can turn your draft picks back that are up in free agent, I think you do it.
Right. Another interesting player is Desmond King. You traded for him midseason, brought in some help. Once he get acclimated to the system, he played well. I thought. We saw early on that he's not an outside guy. He is a slot guy. He needs to be inside covering and playing zone. He's not a man coverage guy either.
No.
And so he's a zone guy. He can blitz. And so I think he might find something there. I'm not sure if he's going to demand a lot of money on the market, but he's another talent that you can sign and help solidify this secondary and bringing in some more younger depth or through the draft or free agency.
Yeah, and also don't forget about Breon Borders, who ended the season on injured reserve. I mean, when he was playing, he actually played fairly decent. So again, that's some more depth on as far as corner is concerned that you might want to bring back. I want to go back on the offensive side of the ball because Adam Humphries. with him, if he decides to come back, to me, that's a guy whose salary you renegotiate because, and it's mainly because, and I hate to do it, but it's just the business side of it because of his injuries.
Right.
We've had him for 2 years, and he's been injured quite a bit on these 2 years. Now, this year wasn't his fault. I mean, he took a major concussion, and really, personally, as far as his health is concerned, I think he should retire. I think,
it looks as though he needs to.
I think he should retire. But if he's going to come back and he wants to come back to this team, I would definitely see if we can renegotiate his contract to get that number down to create some cap space, because that's one thing you're going to run into with this team is the cap space issue that you have. Same thing with Gostkowski, the field goal kicker. You definitely you should renegotiate his if you're going to bring him back because his cap number is huge also. And again, like I said, with the other ones, I think special team wise, I think you bring Darren Bates back. Sometimes you need to keep those cheerleaders on the sideline. I mean, seriously.
No, I agree with you.
Hey, they're valuable to the team. I think sometimes you keep cheerleaders on the sideline, and they're the, for lack of a better term, they're the Flavor Flaves of your football team. They're the hype man.
They're hype man. Everybody's got a good hype man.
Everybody's got a good hype man. So, I think you bring back Darren Bates. I think the linebacker you signed from the Chargers, Nick. Maybe it's just me. Yeah. But I just didn't see anything that he brought to the team this year.
He's supposed to be a special teams ace, but like you said, he didn't really stand out in special teams as much.
Nah.
You saw a lot more Darren Bates. You saw a lot more Blasingame. And Blasingame is a free agent too. Hopefully they'll sign him back. I think he's a good special position player, if you want to say it that way. He plays fullback. He can run the ball, which we didn't see that much of this year, and also play special teams. And so, a lot to work on for the Tennessee Titans, getting those coordinator positions filled, some keeping their homegrown talent, as you mentioned. And as we kind of shift our focus now, some of those big free agents that are out there, if you look at what we could possibly look at receiver, let's go there first. I know we could talk about quarterback, if you will, because Woodside he's going to be the guy going forward. We don't know. He didn't have to play this year, but there's some guys out there that are some veteran quarterbacks, and depending on how much money they're asking, you can maybe bring somebody else in and to back up Tannehill, but I don't know if there's anybody that's even worth it on that list. You might, you got AJ McCarron, you got Fitzpatrick, you got Dalton, which those guys are probably going to demand too much money.
Whoa. Back up.
Mm-hmm. What's
the rule? You never, ever bring Fitzpatrick in as a backup quarterback. You just don't do it. You just don't do it. Because the moment you bring Fitzpatrick in as a backup quarterback, he's going to be starting for you. It happens everywhere he goes. And I do mean everywhere. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Right. You're right.
If I'm wrong, somebody text in and call me wrong. But everywhere he goes as a backup, he ends up being your starter.
He does. You're right. He does. It's kind of funny how that works out for him.
It works out for him. He's one of those guys, man. You don't bring him in.
Exactly. And so, we talk about Corey. Let's look at receiver for a minute. You got some guys out there. You got Juju Smith is a free agent. Do you spend the money on Juju and bring him in? He's a good young talent. Pittsburgh's probably going to pay him and keep him there because he's
homegrown for them.
He's homegrown. He's opposite of Claypool. He's probably that gives him a dynamic duo. Especially with Deontay Johnson that can run the fly routes in the seam and Washington. Is that somebody you look at though, Grover, to possibly bring in to this receiver?
I would say this: if you can't get Corey Davis back, absolutely, because with Juju's a number 2. Quaz is kept.
Yeah.
You found that out after Antonio Brown left.
Mm-hmm.
Juju's a number 2.
Mm-hmm.
He's a number 2 receiver. Nothing wrong with that because you need them too. Right. Good route runner. He got a good catch radius can definitely run after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
But I say if you can't keep Corey Davis, he's somebody that you can look at as a number 2 receiver.
Right. You got Allen Robinson's out there, played for Chicago last year. He's a
Yeah,
pretty
now
solid receiver.
that's an intriguing receiver right there.
He's a retriever receiver. He's a big guy. He can catch the ball.
Yeah, runs great routes.
Runs great routes.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely
make tough catches, and so there's another big body guy. If we can't keep
physical.
Corey Davis, right? Sammy Watkins, which he'll probably go back to Kansas City. He's out there
if he's smart,
right? If he's smart.
Seriously, you got to think about it. I think Kansas City was like his third football team he was on.
I think so. Yeah.
And he found a home. Now, granted, he ain't the star everybody thought he was going to be. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is he's good in situational plays. And if I was him, I'm playing with Patrick Mahomes. I don't leave. Right. Take a reduced salary, make my living, and keep on playing.
That's
because right. with Andy Reid's system and Patrick Mahomes, you're going to be a contributor.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. And there was another. Nelson Aguilar. That's another intriguing receiver. He's kind of that mold of AJ Brown, not as big. He played for the Raiders this past season. Can make some catches. I also seen him drop a lot of footballs as well. And so,
and that's what I was going to say. Aguilar. I mean, remember he played with Philly,
right?
And of course he played with the Raiders. And I'll be honest with you, I just never saw enough out of him to warrant going. I think he's more of a type of receiver that you bring in for depth, but not necessarily as a starter, and definitely not as a number two.
Right.
I think, you might be able to use him as a third or fourth receiver, because the bottom line is Khalif Raymond's probably wore down his welcome. So you're going to need somebody who can get deep. So, Aguilar can do that. Mm-hmm. So that's what you look at there. But like you said, he drops a lot of passes. Right. And that's something, you hate. We've experienced that as Titans fans before, with receivers dropping balls left and right. Justin Gage is the first one that comes to mind. So you don't want to start that trend again.
Right. And I agree with you, Will. Will says the next guy that comes in a receiver, if it's not Corey Davis, has got to be able to draw some attention away from A.J. Brown. I agree, man. He's got to be, we know A.J. Brown's the one alpha. This guy's got to be the one Bravo. He's got to be the notch below just a little bit, just to draw that attention off. He can't be the number 2, number 3. He's got to be the one Bravo. And so, we'll see what happens. A lot of names out there, a lot of guys. Zach Pascal, they signed into the practice squad there late in the season. He used to play for the Colts. That might be somebody else they might want to try to keep. But, we'll see what happens as far as that goes, because we kind of have to remake that receiving core, because with Adam Humphries, we don't know about his health. You talked about Khalif Raymond. He might be gone. Cameron Basson, he's still going to be around, but he's not a wild guy, but he can make some plays for you here and there. But, there's got to be somebody else out there that's going to take the pressure off A.J. Brown. It's going to open up the run lanes for Derrick Henry and the play for Tannehill. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the thing of all those receivers, no matter who it is that you mentioned, the one thing, if they come here, the one thing they got to know before they sign on the dotted line, they're going to be required to block. Right. Bottom line. Now that one I give Vrabel credit for, because receivers have got to block in this offense. Mm-hmm. He wants complete receivers. You can't come in being a diva. If you're not going to play full out, in all phases of the game, then really there's no need in you coming here. Exactly. So because think about it, we've had receivers here who would not block to save their life. Mm-hmm. So, now we've seen the benefit of it, and A.J. Brown has improved on his blocking, still needs to get better, but you found out that Corey Davis is your best blocking receiver, and a lot of Derrick Henry's long runs are because Corey Davis was the one making the blocks that freed him up. So that's another reason why you really want to bring Corey Davis back. He helps your run game.
Exactly. A lot of names out there in the secondary as well that could be some intriguing additions to the secondary. And I won't go through all of them, but because I know everybody wants to get to the game. The game's gonna come on in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of work to do on this football team, free agency wise. Got to get some depth in the secondary. You got to look at getting you a pass rusher off the edge. Some guys that are going to come in and really add a threat to this defensive line, this defensive front. You know, Von Miller's out there. He's 32 years old though. You know, do you bring him in? He might be able to get you a few years, but he's gonna demand too much money, right?
well, let's be honest about Von Miller, man. Von Miller's got his own set of problems right now.
He does. He's got
his own set of problems, so you can't even count on him. You don't even know if he's gonna be in the league next year.
I'm gonna tell you though, but there's some interesting people out here, Grover. Real quick, and we'll move on. Matt Judon played for the Ravens last year. You got Leonard Williams. You know, everybody's kind of in, but he plays solid football on the defensive end for the Giants. Bud Dupree, but he's got an ACL. He's coming off of. Not really sure how healthy he's going to be. Shaquille Barrett, he's out there for Tampa Bay. You know, so a lot of names on the defensive side of the ball that's worth mentioning, especially off the edge and the interior line and in the secondary. And you know, do you move on from Kenny Vaccaro? That's another question that this secondary has. You know, he not a lot of foot speed. He's kind of banged up last season. You know, or do you restructure his money to free up some cap space to make some additions to the secondary?
Well, I'll be honest with you with Kenny Vaccaro. You know, I think for me you restructure it. But again, I when I look at the secondary, I think first you know, we know there are players you got to address. But first, you got to address the guy who was coaching your safeties and the guy who was coaching your secondary. You got to address that because there was something in that room that flipped from the season before as far as the way they played. You can't tell me a secondary that goes from being really one of the top secondaries in the league. Everybody was considering them that to being in the bottom quarter of the league. Well, you got, and the only change you really made in that secondary was you changed coaches and you had Adoree Jackson hurt. So, I mean, you got to start looking at that and see what's going on as far as your players are concerned, because there was something wrong in that secondary room with the safeties and the corners to where Malcolm Butler was your best corner. Granted, he had a good season. I'm not knocking him.
He did.
But I'm just saying, when you have an all-pro safety in Kevin Byard and you have a good, strong safety in Kenny Vaccaro, your secondary should have been a lot better than what it was this year.
Yeah.
And there's something in that room, that meeting room, that changed, and you got to evaluate that.
Right. And to go along with what you were just saying, you know, Vaccaro was the tone setter.
Yeah.
In 2019, and we didn't see it at all in 2020.
None of that.
I mean, he was the guy, you know, just like you talked about Darren Bates being the hype guy. He was the guy that set the tone on the defense. He was the guy to come up, make the big hit, get up, get everybody hyped up, get the defense ready to play. And you didn't see any of that out of him this year.
None.
And so
Kevin Byard really didn't make any plays this season. You know, he ended up with one interception at the end of the season.
The guy was averaging what, 5 or 6?
That's what I'm saying. But this is a guy who always in certain games, if he made a play, the defense was on. So, you know, you got to look at these things and figure out what happened in this secondary that caused them to falter the way they did. I mean, there was something, there's something wrong. I won't say wrong, but there's something going on when you look at Amani Hooker having more interceptions than Kevin Byard, or making more splash plays than Kevin Byard.
I do like the fact that Byard came out and said that, you know, he's going to be better. And so we'll see. He's got to put in some work. So you got to like the fact that he took his share of the load.
There's something, and I agree with that assessment that he does, just like Rashad Evans does. Mm-hmm. But you got to look at the situation and did you have the right guys coaching them?
Definitely.
You know, and people can say, you know, coaches don't play on the field on Sundays, and I get that, but coaches allow things to happen and not to happen. And obviously there was something in that room that was allowed to happen that shouldn't have been happening with that secondary and with the linebackers, especially inside linebackers. There was something being allowed in that room that shouldn't have been allowed. So Vrabel has got to look at his defensive coaching staff as well as looking for a DC.
Yeah, that's why I said, I think once he gets the DC in place, I think you'll see some changes because the DC is going to bring in some guys that he's familiar with, right, that he's coached with before, and that's going to be familiar with his scheme, whoever they may be. Hopefully it's an external candidate. No more internal trials or experiments.
No, I think that experiment got played out this year, and I think even Vrabel recognizes that.
Guys, thank you again for joining us for another episode of Halftime Adjustments. Eddie Arnell, G. Witt, putting a bow on the 2020 season for the Tennessee Titans, man. After all the emotion, we finally got it all out of our system. Here, it's about 4 weeks since the last day, 3 weeks. Finally got it all out of our system. We can come back and talk about it. But again, a lot to be proud of for this football team. 11 wins, AFC South championship. It just fell a little short. Who would have thought that the offense would have played worse than the defense in the final game?
Well, that's kind of weird, but you got to understand, that's one of those games where you see Baltimore come out to play. Mm-hmm. Their main goal was making sure, like, Derrick Henry is not going to run over us again. He's beaten us 2 games in a row. We're not going to let that happen. The problem we had was Arthur Smith didn't adapt to what Baltimore was doing.
And I will say this too, before we hop off. If you watch that Buffalo Bills game and that Ravens game, the Bills showed you how to play sound assignment football. If Absolutely. You watched them, they stayed in their lanes. They played their responsibilities to a T.
Right.
Lamar Jackson, nobody had more than 42 yards rushing for the Ravens. And you talking about a team that's almost averaging 200 yards rushing a game. And so that was, outstanding football that they play on the defensive side of the ball. So before we get off, give me some predictions for today, man. Who wins? Who's going to the Super Bowl? Come on.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna go with the Packers.
Okay.
And the main reason for the Packers is just that defense is playing lights out.
You're right.
So I think defensively they can hang with Tampa Bay's offense and slow them down, because offensively they're gonna be able to move the ball.
Mm-hmm.
On the other game with the Chiefs and the Bills, man, that's a tough one. But for some reason, my gut is telling me that the Bills are going to win it.
The Bills. I like that. And so
I could be, I'm probably wrong because Mahomes is going to play, but I think the Bills will probably win that game.
I agree. And here's who I pick. And then follow me on this. So you got the Bills. I'm going with the Bills too. I think the Bills are going to beat KC. I really do. I'm going with Tampa Bay. The reason why I'm going with Tampa Bay because it's set up perfect, man. Look at it. Tampa Bay. Tom Brady can be the first quarterback in the NFL history to host a Super Bowl game at home.
Yep.
Then, if you go beyond that, look at the history of Buffalo against Tom Brady. Who always beat Buffalo up was big brother Tom Brady. And so here we go. The final match may not be the final matchup, but here we are for the matchup for it all. Buffalo having to beat Tom Brady and his team to win a championship. Man, what better story is that to wrap up the 2020 season?
Hey, especially with the way it's gone this year.
Right. Hey. That's just a story made for the ages, right? And so I'm going Buffalo and I'm going Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl. And we'll see. Because the truth is, too, Tampa Bay's defense is playing well, too. They did a great job against New Orleans. Now, granted, Drew Brees is not the Drew Brees he was a few years ago. I don't think he's fully healthy at this point as he was, before he got hurt. And, I think that they can get after Aaron Rodgers some in the pocket. The thing's going to be is the weather.
Thank you.
The weather, because nobody from Tampa Bay has played in that environment, right?
Well, here's the thing, and I want everybody to, a lot of people are too young to remember this, but back in the 70s, the one team you never wanted to get the home field advantage throughout the playoffs were the Minnesota Vikings. And because they were still playing outdoors, and you had to go up there in that cold and in that snow.
Yep.
It's the same thing with the Packers. You having to go up there in the cold, and they're talking about snow today. And to me, that's the big difference, really. The weather is going to play a part in it. And bottom line is Green Bay is used to it. Tampa Bay isn't, even though they got players who have played in cold weather games before. But you also got some young players who hadn't played in playoff football in the cold weather. It's a totally different ball game. That's when I give Green Bay really because defensively, I think they're pretty even. Offensively, I think they're pretty even. But I think the X factor is going to be the weather. And let's be real about it. I still say it. And the one person Tampa Bay cannot get hurt is the running back not Fournette, but the other one I can't
Ronald
remember
Jones.
his name.
Yeah, Ronald Jones second. Yep.
Because Fournette is going to get hit, and what do we always say about Fournette when he gets hit?
He's gonna ball him, take his ball home with him.
And he's going to take his ball home. So that's going to be the difference.
Again, guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of Halftime Adjustment. That wraps up the 2020 season. Thank you for the love, support all season long, man. This is season 4? Has it been 4 years?
Is it season 4, season 3, season 4?
I lost count, man. I've been doing it so long.
But no, it's good, man.
We got some new things coming for y'all, man. We're gonna be streaming simultaneously on Facebook and YouTube going forward. Trying to expand the show, the brand. And be looking out for us. We'll be back once the all season starts kicking up in gear and free agency and so on and so forth. And draft time, we'll be back. Grover and I for halftime adjustments. And so
don't forget about the podcast.
You'll hear Grover on there as well. Got to get him on there. It's Midweek Heat. Halftime adjustments is on all podcast listening platforms that you can think of. Check it out. It's a good show. Go more in depth about a lot of things around the NFL. But for our Titans fans here, man, we're going to keep bringing you the heat about the Titans on this show. And so, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting us through this season. And we'll be back, man. Be looking out for our next live show. We'll get that out. A down there, G, we are out of here, man. Y'all have a good day. Enjoy championship weekend. Peace.
That's right. Peace.